Hello and welcome to Ask Amanda Now. I'm your host, Strata lawyer Amanda Farmer. It's Friday. We are heading out live to the Your Strata Property Facebook page, also going out to our friends on LinkedIn and watching via YouTube. How's your week in Strata been? Mine has been very busy, not so much in Strata, out of Strata this week, doing a bit of travel, a little bit of media as well, some of which you will have seen here on the Facebook page, certainly over on LinkedIn as well, participating in the ABC News live blog, which I am going to tell you a little bit more about today, and haven't posted this one on Facebook yet, but I have since Wednesday been down to Melbourne and back. Just got back this afternoon and participated in I'm going to call it TV news interview. So I'll share a little bit more about that here on the page this weekend and absolutely give you access to that full interview when it hits in a couple of weeks' time. So busy, feeling a little drained, a little tired, as I know so many of you in Strata do by the time we get around to a Friday. Our Ask Amanda Now session is usually the opportunity for me to answer one question that has been asked either here on the page or in my inbox after we put the call out. I'm actually going to do a little more than that today, answering a few questions, a couple of additional questions that came through as part of the ABC News feature that ABC has not published on their website yet, but I certainly answered for owners who submitted a question. I'm going to share those with you, and then we will do our usual one question answered on Ask Amanda Now today. We will absolutely get to that. I have chosen one for you. If you're coming in live, lots of eyes there coming in. You're escaping from the wild and windy weather, cold in Sydney. That cold has crept up here with me too, where I am. I was pleased to get off the tarmac today. Didn't want any weather cancellations preventing me from getting back for the weekend. So I hope if you're traveling, you're keeping safe. Anna saying, hi, Amanda, how are you? I'm great. Thank you, Anna. Hope you're well too. Hey, Sean, good to see you. Hey, Wendy, lovely to have you here with me. I saw a few familiar names come through in the questions through the ABC live blog. So the way that worked, a few of you were in my inbox asking, and Rochelle was helping to fill in some blanks as well on Wednesday. The way it worked was you could submit questions through the ABC News website, and there was a panel of us, a panel of legal experts ready and waiting to answer your questions. We were doing that in writing, banging away at our keyboard for quite a few hours. We were online on Wednesday before I had to jet off to Melbourne. This was all about the Know Your Rights, Know Your Neighbourly Rights, the ABC was calling it, live Q&A blog hosted by the ABC News Law Report. Some of you may tune in to Damien Carrick's Law Report either through Radio National or on the ABC Listen app. I chatted to Damien a couple of months ago now about parking in Strata, and we had such a great chat. I was invited back to participate in this Neighbourly Rights Q&A live blog. So those who live either in Strata or even in a freestanding home who perhaps have a question or a dispute maybe with their neighbour were invited to post their questions through the blog either beforehand or as we were running the blog live on Wednesday. Those were published on the ABC News website, and the answers from the legal experts, of which I was one, were posted there. My co-panelists, co-legal experts were Barbara McDonald from University of Sydney and Kate Offer from the University of Western Australia Law School. So we do have the link for you, and Rochelle and Nena are here helping me out. They're going to post that link here in the comments. It is also further down the page, the link to go and visit the blog. It's all still up there. All of those questions that were posted and questions that were answered by the legal team are there. And it has just become what I've called a treasure trove of practical day-to-day property law advice, common issues that we get asked, whether it's about noise or trees or bylaws or stuff left on common property. I have to say noise. When you scroll through those Q&As, noise was the big question that kept coming up both in and out of Strata. So that's going to be a nice link to bookmark and head back over and see what the legal experts have to say on those issues. More of you coming in to say hello. Hey, Chu, good to see you. Gail is here saying hi. Next, Sean, off the rank here. Sean O. Hey, Dave. Hi, Josh. Good to see you. Margaret's here saying happy Friday, all in capitals. It's the capitals kind of day. Margaret, I need that. As I said earlier, lots of travel this week. A little bit tired when I'm away from home. Like most of you, I'm sure, I don't sleep very well. You're in a different bed, pillow's not quite right. You're in a hotel, there's weird noises. So yeah, feeling it by this time of the week. So thank you for the capitals. Petra, good afternoon to you. And Vivienne, lovely to see you as well. Okay, so I've said today is an Ask Amanda Now. We are going to do the one question that I've chosen from the list that was sent to me today, but I'm also going to revisit for me, but the first time for you, a couple of questions that I did answer for the ABC, but they didn't make it into the blog. And maybe you are watching, maybe your question was asked and you didn't see the answer come through. If you are, feel free to let me know. But I wanted to make sure that if these are issues that are problematic for you in Strata, then you've got the answers to them. Already published over on the blog, there are answers about the best way to deal with residents who leave their personal items on the common property. And disappointingly, no, my answer is not finders keepers. I've set out there what you can do in Strata if you're faced with that problem. There was a question about an off-the-plan purchase where the budget turned out to be significantly higher, in fact, double the draft budget that was proposed by the developer. Is there anything that we can do about that as new owners in a brand new building having bought off the plan? My answer to that one is over there on the blog. And can we enforce bylaws against committee members? What if it's the committee members breaching the bylaws and they don't want to deal with it? What are the steps that we can take as owners to enforce bylaws against committee members? So all of those answers to those questions and a whole lot more over there on the live blog for you. Link here in the comments for you to go and check that out. Hey, Shana, joining us from cold and rainy Coffs Harbour. It's a little bit like that around the country at the moment. So I'm not going to get into the questions that you can go and have a look at and read my answers to, as well as Barbara's answers and Kate's answers over there on the blog. But a couple of questions I did answer that haven't made it to the blog. One of them from Tony. Tony's saying that he and his wife live in Strata in New South Wales. And this is something to notice. ABC is a national broadcaster, right? So we were getting questions and owners, those who were asking questions, were asked to say what state they were in. Lots of questions from WA, questions from New South Wales. There might have been some questions in there from Queensland as well. So really interesting. Wherever you are across the country, do dive in there and see those different perspectives. But Tony is in New South Wales. And he said, we've been experiencing excessive noise disruption from our neighbour who lives above our unit over the last 12 months. And the noises are mainly living noises. So there's heavy footfalls, there's sounds like stomping, running around in the living area and the bedrooms, lots of furniture dragging, pushing around the living area, sometimes in the bedrooms. And this normally happens in the evening. Sometimes it's after 9 o'clock. Sometimes it's the early morning between 7 and 8, and also on the weekends. Tony and his wife have made complaints through the building manager and noticed a slight improvement, but there is still a disturbance. Tony asked, what are my rights as a Strata resident and what other possible options are available to escalate the matter for what Tony still hopes would be an amicable solution. So, as I said, we've got a lot of questions about noise. It's a question that comes up a lot in our members Q&A forum. It's something that I have spoken about here before, have spoken about on the podcast, and it seems to be a really common challenge for those living in strata. I have certainly lived in strata myself over the years in a number of different buildings, and I totally get it. These buildings, especially in this country for some reason, are not designed to be soundproof. Arguable, nor necessarily should they be, but I know how easily noise can travel through a ceiling, through a wall, across a strata building, and how disruptive that can be to your day-to-day. Anna's saying doors slamming. Love that. Yeah, we do get that too. So my answer to Tony, and it's one that you can refer back to, that you can use if you're a strata manager, you might want to suggest to your owners who are making these complaints, suffering from these problems. I've said to Tony, as a strata resident, you are entitled to the peaceful enjoyment of your home. That is the starting point. That's where we start in strata. I'm often asked, do I have rights here? Can I do anything about this? And yes, you are entitled to peaceful enjoyment. Those are the words. And this is quite unique to strata. If you're in a freestanding home, if you're in a semi-detached, if you're in a terrace house and your neighbor is making noise, there's very little that you can do, if anything. Ring the police if they're having a noisy party, they knock on the door, be quiet. This is the unique thing about strata. You can actually do something about it because you have this right to peaceful enjoyment. And it's very likely that that's going to be enshrined in bylaws. I'll get to that in a sec. I always recommend a conversation with your noisy neighbor first, if you feel comfortable doing so. And I know not everybody does. I always say my threshold for conflict and confrontation is much higher than most people's because I'm a lawyer and that's what I do for a living. I know when we were living in strata, my husband, there is no way that he would go and knock on anybody's door to complain about anything, but I didn't have a problem doing it. I'd be the one, in my dressing gown, banging on the young boys next door we had for a little while who would have the late night parties. Happy to do it. That's me. It's not everyone. I get it. But if you can, try and have that conversation, or have someone in your family who can have that conversation. The people who are making the noise might not realize how easily noise is traveling. From the description that Tony gave, it kind of sounded like maybe they were doing their daily exercise. Maybe there's some star jumps going on. Maybe we're moving some furniture around and doing our Pilates, as I like to do from time to time. Maybe they can do that elsewhere or do it at a different time or go to the gym. They may not realize that you can hear their every move. And when somebody finds out you can hear their every move, depending on what those moves are, they may want to change their behavior. If that doesn't work, or perhaps in addition to having that chat, definitely check the bylaws that are applicable to your building. And you can get a copy of the bylaws from your strata manager. It is very likely that most of us, almost all of us, have a bylaw to the effect that residents must not make noise sufficient to disturb the peaceful enjoyment of another resident. And in Tony's case, it sounds to me like his neighbour is in breach of that bylaw. You might also have a bylaw about flooring, along the lines of floors must be covered or treated so as to prevent the transmission of noise. So if the noise is louder or the problem is exacerbated due to hard flooring, there may be a breach of the flooring bylaw as well. Keep a diary of each noise incident and present that to the strata manager, asking that they raise the complaint with the strata committee and issue a letter to your noisy neighbour. Now, this might not be at the level of a formal notice to comply, which we can issue, owners corporations can issue in New South Wales, but a first letter letting this person know what it is that you're suffering and letting them know, hey, we've got a bylaw or two about this and you're actually in breach of the bylaws. If the noise continues, then the owners corporation can take that next step of issuing an official notice to comply, which can ultimately end up in a penalty order from the tribunal if the breach persists. Now, here's the important part that I'm always careful to add in when I'm guiding owners who are experiencing noise problems because you tell me this, raise these questions. Strata committee says, not our problem, not bothering us. We don't have to do anything about it. This is your issue with your neighbor. You deal with it. If the owner's corporation will not take action under the bylaws, you are entitled as an owner or as a tenant to do so yourself. You won't be able to issue that formal notice to comply and get a penalty order. Only an owner's corporation can issue a notice to comply and get a penalty order. Excuse me. But you can apply for mediation with your noisy neighbour through New South Wales Fair Trading. And if that doesn't work, you can ultimately seek an order from the tribunal, not a penalty order, but an order that requires your peaceful enjoyment to be respected, requires your neighbour to stop doing whatever it is that they're doing that disturbs your peaceful enjoyment, and perhaps even to cover any hard flooring that needs to be covered to reduce the transmission of noise. So that is my very general, fairly standard guidance that I give to people who come to me saying, Amanda, we've got a noise problem. What, if anything, can we do about it? If you want to take that and run with it, use it as an education piece, strata managers, for residents, for committee members, go for it. That's a nice little resource there for you. Heading over to those comments, and lots of you coming in for this conversation today. Thank you. Patricia saying good afternoon. Hey, Patricia. Good afternoon to you, Cole. Hi, Desert. Good to see you. Anna saying, I live in a villa and I still hear stuff from my neighbours. Yep. One of my neighbours decided to let people know by slotting notes under the door. Fair enough. Thanks, Anna. Sean O says, it drives me insane. There is a resident upstairs who slams the door every time she goes out. We had a problem in our building, which I think you might have heard me say last week, is about 45 years old, where the sliding doors leading out to the balcony were getting quite old, and they're on quite old rollers. And if you know what old sliding doors are like in Strata, it would be like thunder when somebody was opening and closing the sliding door, even to the extent that my neighbour below me would complain about our sliding door and how it would open and close. And when you've got kids and dogs and people coming and going, the sliding doors and the windows can be a source of noise. The good thing about those is you can generally install some new rollers and they roll a lot more smoothly, but those doors do get to a stage where ultimately they're too old and need to be replaced. Will is posting, I think, a long question there about smoke alarms. I'm not sure I'll get to that one today, Will, but thank you. Petra is saying, I had a tenant neighbour like that. They moved after 7 years of grief. People do. They move out of Strata when they're experiencing this and can't solve it. Hey, Jennifer. Jennifer's saying, what about noise when there are renovations? Is this covered by bylaws? Yeah, good question. It should be. So if there is a major work renovation happening, and by major work, I mean generally a bathroom renovation where we're affecting waterproofing, there should be a specific bylaw approving that work, that particular work. And that bylaw should have some pretty strict conditions about when work is to be carried out, that there is to be no disturbance or limited disturbance to other residents. All of those clauses are certainly in my stock standard renovation bylaw. And there's no reason a building couldn't have a bylaw that generally deals with renovation work, indeed should have a bylaw that generally deals with cosmetic work, minor work, and sets out those kinds of conditions about not creating noise sufficient to disturb peaceful enjoyment. Of course, there's going to be a period of time, and good neighbours will let you know. They'll put those notes under the door. They might knock on the door. Hey, there's going to be jackhammering. It's going to be a week. If you need to have your Zoom calls elsewhere, if you're a shift worker and you're going to be sleeping, please, I'm just letting you know, that's always encouraged and a good idea if you want to be a good neighbour. But having those conditions in a bylaw specific to renovation work is a good idea. Anna's saying, instead of going via the committee, can the person affected go straight to the strata manager? Yeah, I generally recommend if you've got a strata manager, you go to the strata manager and always ask the strata manager, please ensure that this email is passed on to the strata committee and I'm seeking their support with this, solving this problem. That's what strata manager is there for. And the thing about going to the strata manager is that your complaint, your issue is then on the record and on the official record that is kept by the strata manager. Hey, Leonie. Frank's saying door closers are very useful. Yes, to stop that slamming. Yeah. But they're fire doors, Frank. I know we had door closers in our building, have door closers in our building, but because they're fire doors and they're so heavy, they kind of do that really slow and then clunk. And that's that's the sound that we all hear. Luke is saying peaceful enjoyment is entirely subjective. Yeah, and it really can be when you see these cases play out. And that was my answer to another question that you'll see on the blog was it's really up to you as the person suffering to explain how, and that's your evidence if you end up before the tribunal, explain how it is that you're being disturbed, what it is that you're experiencing. And the tribunal is that they're going to apply or attempt to apply an objective test to all of that. But a tribunal member is not a robot. It's going to matter what you say your disturbance has been. And it can feel subjective, I know, Luke, when these cases are being determined. Okay, this is a hot button issue here. I'm going to keep moving on. I haven't read through all of those, but I do want to get back to another question that was asked for the purpose of the blog and hasn't, as far as I can see, yet made it onto the website, but it is definitely one that I've answered. And it's not one I've been asked before. This is a little bit different. This one was kind of out of the box. This question came from Wendy. And Wendy said, what obligation does Strata have to install security cameras to common areas when requested or recommended by police? Wendy says that she's had a long-running problem with a nuisance neighbour. This has escalated several times to the point where the police have been called about harassment and abuse, and some neighbours have had to go to court for a personal violence order. Given these incidents and long-running problems in the block, the police have asked for and then recommended, when it didn't exist, security cameras to capture evidence and to deter further nuisance behaviour and harassment. Now, just the year before, says Wendy, the Strata had passed a rule that there are to be no cameras on the common property. And that came about because a former tenant was actually surveilling other people with audio recording devices. So Wendy said, does a Strata building have an obligation to install security cameras, just video, not audio, to common areas to ensure resident safety? The police are asking for security cameras. They are recommending that these cameras be installed because of these incidents, and these incidents have been long-standing over the last 18 months or so. Fascinating question. Not one that I had been asked before, though I am sure, as Strata lawyers do, I'm a big advocate for cameras in common areas. I am sure police commonly recommend cameras for common property and for buildings that are suffering from this kind of antisocial, if not illegal, behavior. But the answer that I prepared for Wendy was, unless it was ordered by a court or ordered by the tribunal, I can't see that an owners corporation has any obligation to install security cameras on its common property, even where it might be recommended by police. This would usually be an improvement or an upgrade to the common property, and in New South Wales at least, that requires approval by special resolution at a general meeting. So without that special resolution, I don't think a recommendation from the police alone is going to result in a court order or a tribunal order to put the cameras in place. You guys are clever cookies. You let me know if you disagree with that view. Perhaps an alternate view might be that in the course of its maintenance obligations, maintaining the common property, is there some obligation to make sure that the common property is safe for residents? I can kind of see that argument being worked up. We make sure that common property is safe from hazards. We don't want any workplace health and safety issues to arise if we've got workers on the common property. Is this a similar situation where we are trying to ensure the safety of residents? And if we've got the police, call them the expert opinion in this situation, saying, hey, I think you need to have security cameras. Is that something that the Strata committee could do? as part of their maintenance obligation. Could be a creative argument there. Anna's saying, I applied to have cameras when discussed at the AGM. The restriction was that the common area is not being recorded. If it is, the video becomes the property of the owner's corporation. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right, Anna. If the camera is the owner's corporation's, and it's on the common property, then that footage is a record of the owner's corporation. If you're saying, Anna, I wanted to install my own cameras on the common property, then yes, you need approval for that. And perhaps not an unreasonable request from the owner's corporation to say, if we're going to give you approval for this, then we want access to the footage as well. Henry saying, hey, Henry is saying the key with CCTV is to have a proper policy in place, including who has access to the footage, the process of gaining access, and the retention of the footage. Yep, for sure. And Chu's saying, I think there's bylaws that you cannot stop people putting a security device on their property. Yeah, it's one that we have talked about before, and that's usually the question that I get. The question I get is usually, can I install a camera on my lot property, even when filming common property or even filming someone else's lot? And the short answer to that is yes, surprisingly. Yes, you can. There is no law that prevents you from obtaining that video footage. Audio is a bit different, but video footage of someone else on their property or on the common property. Where you have a barrier in Strata is where if you want to install that device on the common property, then you are going to need approval. And at least in New South Wales, that approval is by special resolution. But putting that camera on your own property, I've had a client who was involved in a situation where they found that to be necessary, put a camera on their own property, and it was filming another balcony from which some things had been thrown, quite dangerously thrown from a balcony in the past. That was challenged. And the advice that I gave at the time, and then we went and got some specialist advice from a barrister on the question, is that as long as there's nothing in the bylaws that says otherwise, there is nothing in our law, our New South Wales law we were looking at, either statute law or past cases, that would prevent you from having that kind of installation, even if it is filming someone else's property. Chris is telling me our bylaws state that we can't have that. Yeah, that's interesting. Hey, Kristen, who's saying, I made it. Phew, didn't miss out. Another fun Friday afternoon. Yes, well, we're getting a bonus Ask Amanda Now session. I usually keep these sessions quite short, but I have just covered off 2 questions that didn't make the ABC blog, but were certainly asked for that purpose, and I did answer. So I want to make sure those answers are put to good use. We've covered off Tony's question about noise, and I've just answered Wendy's question about whether an owner's corporation has to comply with a recommendation by the police to install security cameras in a situation where residents are being harassed and there is some antisocial, maybe even illegal behavior going on. So those answers are there for you. There's a lot of comments here today. I'm not reading every word of those, but what I am going to do is now move on to, before I do this, I was going to move on to our one question that has been asked specific to today's session. But before I do that, I just made a note for myself earlier to come back to a question that was asked and I have answered and has been published on the ABC blog. You will be able to read this, but I wanted to highlight it for you because it shocked me. Okay. This question was asked by Carolina, and Carolina said, our strata manager managed to persuade my letting agent to transfer my rental funds into their strata levy account. So the strata manager, Carolina's strata manager, has somehow communicated with her property manager or her letting agent, the one who deals with her tenant, and has convinced that letting agent to take Carolina's money that she gets for rent and pay it towards strata levies without Carolina's instruction, approval, consent to use her money in that way. It gets worse. Carolina said and I think he is the strata manager, also gained access to my unit without my permission. All of this, says Carolina, was done without my knowledge and without my consent. What can I do about that? Said Carolina. Can I complain about the theft, the abusive behavior, the strata managing agent's misconduct? And Carolina is in Western Australia. And she's asked, are managing agents regulated by any statutory or independent body in Western Australia? So this one is on the blog. You'll see my answer there. But I wanted to bring it here to our live session because there are a few things that shock me in Strata these days. I was talking to a new client during the week. We were having a Zoom call. And she was saying to me, Amanda, there's bullies and they've said these things and they do these things and they did this on my exclusive use area. And quite rightly, this person was very upset and very shocked about that. And I said, okay, yep. And have you seen this happen before, Amanda? Yeah, that's the kind of behavior that I hear about regularly. So there are a few things that shock me in Strata. This Carolina story absolutely floored me. I couldn't believe that a letting agent, a property manager, would just take money that belongs to you, the owner, and give it to your strata manager or give it to your strata company, which is the equivalent of our owners' corporations in Western Australia, to pay levies, seemingly at the direction of the strata manager. And then for a manager to be accessing a unit without the permission of that occupant or that owner was really serious misconduct. Unfortunately, in Western Australia, as far as I am aware, there is no regulation of strata managing agents. There is no requirement that strata managing agents be licensed. As for where Carolina could go about this, I've suggested have a look and see if the strata manager is a member of the Real Estate Institute in WA. Can you complain there about their conduct? Otherwise, consumer protection in WA, there's a number you can call for WA consumer protection, but they're really only going to intervene, I think, if the strata manager also has a real estate agent's license. And absolutely, when it comes to the letting agent, I said, you got to fire that person. It's got to be a breach of their agency agreement with you as the landlord to be acting without your instructions and to be stealing your money and giving it to the strata company in payment of levies without your instruction. That surely is a breach of their agreement, and you need to get rid of that person quick, smart. So if you want to look at the detail there of my answer to Carolina's awful situation, then that one has been published over on the blog. I can see some issues with clicking the link there. Anna helping out there with another link. Thank you very much, Anna. We can problem with all of these comments. I think Rochelle and Mina, we can post that link again as well to bring it back up to the top. Henry saying go directly to the owner, have the lock changed. Yeah, so Carolina is the owner. Carolina's the owner. I don't know if she has a tenant in the property or maybe the property has been vacant, but certainly there was access without her consent. Consider a PPO against the strata manager. Yeah, is that like a personal, what we'd call a PVO in New South Wales, Henry? I know you're in Victoria, I think. PPO against the strata manager to stop them, entering your property without your consent. Anna saying, I think nationally that's a privacy breach, is it not? Yep, indeed. Henry's just saying you need to create an ABC account to view the blog. I don't know if you do to view it, Henry. You needed to create one to comment. I certainly haven't been prompted to log in anytime I've gone to look at what's already posted there on the blog. So that link is just coming up again from my team in the comments there as well. Okay. We are now going to move on to what we usually do at the beginning of an Ask Amanda Now session. I let you know the one question drawn from all of those that have been asked earlier today, the one question that I have chosen to answer. And as I always say, we get asked a lot of questions. I choose the one that I think is most interesting, the one that I think is going to help the most number of people. And we've had a question from Nena. That one's just come up on the screen now. Should my strata building cancel its GST registration? Fascinating. And I'm going to put the call out to the few strata managers who I know who are tuning in to just prick up your ears here for me and let me know if you encounter this question, this issue when it comes to GST registration for our buildings, because you'll have the practical experience. I've got some ideas, but you will have the practical experience. So, a bit more detail around Nina's question. That's a shortened version of it. You can see on the screen there. Nina told me that she's living in a small block and they recently went through a roof membrane replacement. So there was a lot of money that had to be raised that was coming in through levies, I think was the arrangement, and was then being paid out. And because of that, the year's income for the owners corporation went over the GST threshold. So Nina says, of course, we had to register for GST and we all had to pay that additional 10% on our quarterly levies. But it's now been more than 12 months since the work was completed. As I understand it, the owners corporation's income is no longer that high. It's well below the threshold. And Nina said, I asked the strata manager to add to our agenda of the next AGM to discuss cancelling our GST registration. And we then don't have to pay that 10% extra on our strata levies. The strata manager has apparently said, I think we need to get some advice on this. I'm not really sure about this. There may be some implications. We need to think carefully about this. And Nina said, I don't really know what the big deal is. Why do we need to think carefully about it? We're now below the threshold. What do you think, Amanda? Should this be such a difficult decision? All right, so I'm heading over to these guys. I can see Sean O jumping in saying, I encounter this very often. Sean is saying an owners corporation must stay registered for 1 year. Thank you, Sean. That's the kind of information that is very helpful. Those of you who are not familiar with why or when or how an owners corporation registers for GST, quick Google will help you out with this. Where the turnover, and I describe that as the income that the owners corporation is receiving through levies. I'm not sure. Does that include insurance payouts as well? Yeah, I think that would be income of an owners corporation. Where that turnover is more than 150,000 is usually the figure I think strata managers work off. Where that turnover is more than 150,000, and that's because owners corporations are considered non-profit organizations. Might not be the case for all owners corporations. The GST rules are that if you are a for-profit enterprise, the threshold is 75,000. If you are a non-profit enterprise, the threshold is 150,000. When you are receiving income of more than that amount, then you must, by law, be registered for GST. And then you need to start charging that 10% on levies, issuing tax invoices for levies, and then claiming GST credits for the expenditure where you are also paying GST to suppliers. So many buildings, many buildings will be registered for GST, and some, like Nena's building, would not have been registered and then get bumped up into that bracket and need to get registered. Caroline saying the owners corporation can choose to have their quarterly levies inclusive of GST when they register, then they're not paying extra. Yeah, true. But then they're also receiving less income to spend as part of their budget, I imagine, Caroline. So you're sort of reducing your actual levies by 10% just so there's no hip pocket change or impact for the owners. But it is going to mean you've got to remember that 10% is going to the tax office, and you're not going to have that to spend. Anna's saying if you're registered for GST, the insurers normally remove what is called the ITC. Is that the income tax credit? Thank you, Anna. Chu is saying, yes, it does include GST and insurance payouts. Thank you. Sean's saying also income from things like mobile towers. Great. Okay, all helpful. So, returning to Nina's question, what if we're no longer over that threshold? There is an administrative expense, absolutely, I can see, for being registered for GST because you have to do your quarterly BAS. There's more accounting to be done, and having to if your management company has had to implement some special software to make sure that those levy notices can be issued with as tax invoices with GST, then that can be an issue as well. Um, I can see why you might be thinking, do we really need to do this? As far as I can see, and Sean's told us we need to stay registered for at least a year, but as far as I can see, and again, this has come from my very expert Googling, there's no reason why you couldn't cancel that GST registration. However, having said that, it is a good idea to get some advice. I think your strata manager, Nina, mentioned legal advice. I'm not sure why you'd get legal advice, but advice from an accountant. And I'd suggest whoever it is who maybe audited your accounts in the last year, if you did get an audit, if your income was over 250,000, you absolutely must have had those accounts audited. Get your strata manager to reach out to one of those accountants who's very familiar with strata financial records and strata accounting, and just run that question by them. But from what I can see, the general advice from the ATO that's out there is that, yeah, if you're not hitting that threshold, and Sean's told us that's after a year, then you can cancel that. I would also just be thinking, Nina, about what's planned for the future for this building. Is there going to be other work that needs to be done that is going to increase that levy income in the future as well? And then you have to get registered again. And then that's another task. Is it not better just to stay registered? I understand that you are paying that extra 10% on your levies, but you're also getting part of that back through when you have your GST claim, when you're paying out the GST to suppliers, and then you're claiming that back as that tax credit, as I think a few people have posted here in the comments. So you might find that while it feels like you're paying more, when it's averaged out at the end of the day, it's not too much more. Okay, heading to those comments. Sandra's saying, while the OC is registered, it can claim input credits. Yes, for the 10% GST on expenses. Yep. I guess it's kind of a hard thing to explain to owners, isn't it? Where you feel like, but I'm paying the 10% out of my pocket, and I know that um, the owners corporation is claiming that tax credit back from when it pays out GST to suppliers, but I'm not getting that. I'm not getting that. It's going into the owners corporation's account. So I can sort of see where Nina's coming from, to feel like she's paying a little bit extra when perhaps she doesn't need to. And then there is, I think I had a chat with Rena Van Alst, strata manager, on a podcast episode in the past, where Rena took on a new building, went through all their records. They were registered for GST. They didn't need to be registered for GST, and she was able to cancel that and in turn save some money for the owners corporation, because there didn't need to be this quarterly BAS submitted and these accounting tasks done, which the previous strata manager was doing when they really didn't need to do it. Sean M is saying, sorry, I had to talk to the ATO. They're not chasing me. Did I miss anything? I don't know if that's a joke, Sean, because we're talking about the ATO and GST. So yeah, you missed something. Anna's saying, Nina, the way to think of it is we pay GST for all products and services. Yep. Thank you, everybody, for those contributions and that help for Nina. I hope, Nina, if you're tuning in, you have found that one helpful. Just clicking some buttons here at my end. If you have a question, had a question, sent me a question, popped it here in the comments. I saw some questions that didn't quite touch on what we were talking about today, so I haven't got stuck into those. If you have one of those and you do want me to answer it, the way that you can get an answer guaranteed is inside our members only Q&A forum. Now, I remind you of this each time we have our Ask Amanda Now session, because yes, you do post on the page. You do send me emails in my inbox. You didn't answer my question, Amanda. If you are a member, please do log in to the members Q&A forum. I was in there last night. I was in there this morning. I'll be in there over the weekend, answering your questions in writing detailed, linking you to relevant legislation, to cases, to other resources inside our membership. That is the place to go to get answers to your Strata questions from me. If you are not yet a member, then you are always welcome to come on over and join us. The place to go to find out all about membership, which is far more than just the Q&A forum, is stratamembership.com. That's the website to hit. Thank you, team, for posting that in there. Sean's telling me he's registering a new Strata-related business. You heard it here first, everybody. He's going to be moonlighting. Oh, that sounds exciting. Let us know when we're ready to share more, Sean. Stay warm, everybody. Rug up. Enjoy your weekend with those you love and those who love you. Thank you for spending some of your Friday afternoon here with me. I wish you well in Strata. Catch up with you next time. Bye for now.